Forestry is a backbone and an enabler to development. And without trees, we wouldn't have the wetlands. Without trees, we wouldn't have the air we breathe. Without trees, the rivers, the swamps, the lakes would dry up. Imagine if you planted 1 hectare of eucalyptus on your private land. In 2 years, in 1 hectare, there are 1,100 trees. And in 2 years, each pole would be going away for 40,000 shillings. Many Ugandans have unplanned births. Getting a boyfriend or a girlfriend means immediately giving birth without forecasting the needs and the pressure onto the economy. We've arrested over 200 people in the last 3 months, including the ringleaders. And they tell us the people who are paying us are these factory owners, Chinese industries.
Encouraging when you have actual leaders who are the ones encroaching these areas, the swamps. There's, for example, one minister who is building in a swampy area, and you think, okay, you are government. We hope that you are the example. And then people are discouraged.
Let's see what happened in Kenya, where buildings were demolished and the wetlands were restored, the forests were restored in Nairobi itself. Right. We can see it in Uganda. It can happen. And now government has begun cracking down on these big investors.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast on marketing. Today, there's a lot of conversation around forestry, people planting trees on their birthdays, people making money out of their trees, their forests. But can we make forests or trees more marketable, even more than coffee, more than oil in this country, so that we are able to achieve a middle class economy? We have a PR and communications strategist with the National Forestry Authority. We've been chasing him for over 3 years now, but because he's such a busy man, we really appreciate you, Aldon, for coming to the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Speak about matters concerning forestry and how we can achieve a middle class economy as Ugandans.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into forestry.
Aldon is a communications consultant. And just like you say, the strategist, I've participated in many marketing and communications campaigns in the renewable energy, in reproductive health, in engineering, now in forestry, in the sugar sector. I started my career as a radio presenter, and I also did some work at universities. I'm a published journalist.
It's a saying on the streets that journalists easily find their way into communications and PR of major organizations.
Because what journalists do is awareness that turns into behavior change, perceptive changes among the audiences that they write for. And therefore, after practicing for some time, you end up in communications. I hold a master's degree in strategic communication. That's how I'm into this.
Okay, so let's get into the thick of it. Tell us, what is the talk of mind now? What are you guys talking about in forestry?
Forestry is a backbone and an enabler to development. And without trees, we wouldn't have the wetlands. Without trees, we wouldn't have the air we breathe. Without trees, the rivers, the swamps, the lakes would dry up. In Uganda, every forest, there are 506, that was set up between 1932 and 1948, were strategically set up to protect water bodies, wetlands, rivers. And that's why you see the fight as a result of population explosion to preserve and conserve these forests. The fight is not to actually preserve that tree, but the other water body. For instance, there has been a talk about Lake Victoria turning its color. The issue is the forests around Lake Victoria have almost been reduced to 40%. An immediate example is where I said that those who turned the permits in Kitubulu Central Forest Reserve, we are going to cancel those permits because they were for ecotourism. Coincidentally, the president came out and said, we have cancelled. I and the president and my executive director, we are still thinking the same way, unlike the other ministers of investment. So these forests are strategic and are an enabler to development. Without the forests, if Lake Victoria, for example, dried up, there are many rivers, even River Nile would cease to have enough water, or it will even dry out. The trees help the water form, first of all, and they preserve it not to dry out faster, in simple terms. So the more trees we have, the more healthier water bodies we have in Uganda, in simple terms. If you cut down a tree, you're creating what we call desertification. And this has come as a result of many human activities, land use change. For example, that Kitubulu Central Forest Reserve, there was an attempt of changing the land use to offices inside the Central Forest Reserve, which is out of the law. So glad that my executive director and the president of Uganda made the same statement that we will cancel. And indeed, they've cancelled these licenses.
That's wonderful. I know it also gives some hope to the young people, because I feel like we are the generation that will live to see the benefits of these trees. And I don't know from your perspective, because we hear a lot of talk around cutting down of trees for charcoal, and also debates around the fact that you're not giving us alternatives. People are cutting down the trees, but what are the alternatives for those people? We're talking about preservation, conservation, but how practical is it for the low-income earners? Now, what are the trends you have seen? Take us back to probably 80s or 70s to today. What is the rate at which we are appreciating forestry from the different centuries?
Before 1980, the forest cover in Uganda was high, way above where we are today, above 4% forest cover. That includes the Central Forest Reserves. In around the 90s, our forest cover began dwindling because of population explosion, the wars in the north, and that kind of thing. So there was no conservation or preservation. Conservation is protecting a forest for sustainable use. Preservation is protecting a forest for nothing but protecting it and not sustainably utilizing its resources. Okay. We need to sustainably use these forests. That slogan of cut one tree, plant 5, plant 3, plant 10. That is sustainable use of forest. Because what's the use of letting a tree grow for 600 years? It falls down and rots. At about 500 years, you could maybe turn it into a product and then plant other 10 trees. Recently, in 2010, our forest cover was below 10%. It was around 8%. But because of government efforts and the National Forestry Authority, we sensitized the masses, put concepts across to government, and told them, look, forests are going down. In northern Uganda, agriculture had ceased to exist because without the forest, there are no rains. That's the water cycle. The rains, then the water gets into the rivers and flows on and on. It is a continuous process. In 2015, we moved from around 8% of forest cover. We began going up. By 2019, we had a forest cover of 12%. That is an increase of about 4%. Today, we stand at 12.7%. And our target by the year 2030 is to achieve a cover of 15% for the Central Forest Reserves. We have 5 types of forests, and the National Forestry Authority, or Ministry of Water and Environment, is in charge of 2 types of forests. The National Forestry Authority is in charge of 1 type of forests, and there are 506, and they are the biggest in size. The Budongos, there are 506 all over the country. They are called Central Forest Reserves. Central because they belong to central government. And they occupy 1.265,741 hectares of forest land in Uganda. The biggest forested area is in Karamoja. That is Zulia Central Forest Reserve.
Never heard of.
Oh, most of the biggest forest land in Uganda is in Karamoja. People may not know. It is not in Budongo or Kigezio, but it is in Karamoja. The biggest forest in Kidepo Valley National Park, that's where Zulia Central Forest Reserve is. Why forestry? There are marketing interventions. The government put up 2,500 hectares for private tree farmers, private planters, both foreign and local. Coincidentally, most of them are local, private farmers. And the purpose is for creation of forest products. Forest products are a very important product that we need on a daily basis. When you go to Mayuge, you will find there is a forest company, Busoga Forest Company, that makes charcoal briquettes, but out of eucalyptus and pines. And they do it both for local and export. but sustainably. As they harvest, they plant. And you may not realize the difference. They have well-managed plantations. Forestry is an enabler of development. It creates incomes. Foresters pay government revenue. And of the government GDP, between 4 to 6 trillion shillings is contributed from forestry activities. So today, we are encouraging people, individually and in groups, to plant trees. Imagine if you planted 1 hectare of eucalyptus on your private land. In 2 years, in 1 hectare, there are 1,100 trees. And in 2 years, each pole would be going away for 40,000 shillings. Now, compared to somebody who plants hectares of maize, of course, maize is food security, but the amount of money one gets in 2 years, okay, let me compare with sugarcane, which is 2 years. The amount of money one gets from 1 hectare of trees compared to 1 hectare of sugarcane, the trees are way bigger.
Looking at it from an economic perspective, so my mom and I planted eucalyptus trees on a hill on Masaka Road, but the eucalyptus completely drained the land. It has fruits and foodstuffs. We have seen that some of these trees actually are a disadvantage as opposed to an advantage in the long run, and it would be nice to hear your thoughts. Just walking around, there are some lodges you go to and they have such beautiful indigenous trees. And when you come to Kampala or the highways looking for those seedlings, they're very hard to find because they'll tell you, oh no, those trees we don't have anymore. They'll give you a seedling that you'll take to your land and it even doesn't germinate. I don't know from your perspective what you think the opportunities are now with the challenges we are facing.
The opportunities at the National Tree Seed Center, we have 35 nurseries in Uganda at different ranges. We have 9 ranges, forestry regions in Uganda, and in each we have nurseries. At the National Tree Seed Center, even tomorrow, there is a colleague who applied and was given 8,000 tree seedlings. He's picking them. This is a narrow specialist in agronomy. And he's going to plant them in Kapchora. When you write, when you express your desire, my office and the executive director's office are there to support you, either in a phased manner or at one go, provided we ascertain your intentions are to increase forest cover in Uganda. Because the National Development Plan looks at increasing forest cover to 15% by the year 2030. We can't do it alone as government. We need each individual, for example, to plant 5 trees on their birthday and name the trees Aggie. This is Aggie 1, Aggie 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see how they are faring. You can call us to see how to manage these trees. About draining a hill, I don't know how waterborne the hill was, but you see there are crops like sugarcane that drain wetlands more than the trees. So for us, our guidance is you don't plant eucalyptus near a wetland. You need to respect either 50 meters before the swamp so that you only prevent the water runoff, but you don't actually drain the swamp from its actual water. So we give, these are still opportunities, free counsel, technical advice on forestry.
With the National Tree Center?
Yes, the National Tree Seed Center. It's in Namamve. And then we have 34 others across the country, including Karamoja in Moroto. We are actually training the Karamojong ladies to grow seedlings of sandalwood. Sandalwood is an ornamental tree that is on demand in China because they use it for making artifacts. Same applies to red and black oak. And other trees like Prunus africana. That one has both curative and ornamental benefits. Teak is the one used for making bats and doesn't burn. If you planted teak, people would not embrace it because it doesn't burn easily. There are many opportunities in forestry. The government has signed the guidelines for carbon. So in future, somebody can grow a forest and preserve it for selling carbon. The hectareage or acreage is measured and how tall the trees are, how big the fruit is, and then there is a calculation and we see how much carbon that tree absorbs from the atmosphere, and that carbon is converted into money. That is an opportunity that Ugandans have to embrace. You may not only grow trees, but you can grow trees alongside other foods and other fruit trees. That is now agroforestry. So there are many opportunities here. And forestry alone, without counting the carbon sequestration, the direct benefits contributing to the GDP of Uganda is between 4 to 6 trillion shillings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think even without the credits that someone can make off of their carbon, they can also learn better farming practices. They have their trees, but they also planting, say, beans underneath. So in any way, it's a win-win. I wonder if there's a challenge then, because you said we started out with 28% coverage. From 28 we went to 10, we went to 8, we went to 11, now we're at 12. The aim is 14. What is the challenge there?
There are two main challenges. One is uncontrolled population increase, unplanned births. Good enough, I have a background in reproductive health. Many Ugandans have unplanned births. Getting a boyfriend or a girlfriend means immediately giving birth without forecasting the needs and the pressure onto the economy.
When I got married, I was so ready to have children right after. But my husband said, no, we have to plan.
You have to plan. It won't only affect you, but it's affecting the economy. And for us in forestry, the more children you give birth to, the more you encroach on forest land. First, the forests themselves. That is now the quantitative encroachment of the forest.
Yeah.
You cut down the number of trees, and then the quality goes down. Yeah, quantitatively and qualitatively, the forests go down. And then finally, you find people parceling out the forest land into their own land.
Okay.
Yeah, we have many court cases.
Yeah.
But it's because of forests, because of a population unplanned here. This should be really looked at, and a lot has been done. The government, through the Ministry of Health and other private partners to control this. The population increase is too enormous, reducing the forest. The other thing is change of land use. Areas that were gazetted, for example, for district forest reserves. You see this golf course in Kampala, around Acacia Avenue. There were forests.
You can see
But now there are,
it's a golf course.
actually, the golf course is the only green belt remaining, but the rest are high buildings. That is where the biggest nightclubs are, and it was a forest. We have, but Nakawa Central Forest Reserve is under the NFA, and it's still there. There are even monkeys, where our offices are. But the forests that belong to Kampala as a district have been sold off, and including wetlands. And what am I driving to? Is that the forests that we see in Uganda are either under the National Forestry Authority, or some of them that we see in Queen Elizabeth are under the Uganda Wildlife Authority. Most of the private, community, and district local forest reserves have been sold off. Another example is in Jinja. There were forests. I grew up in Jinja. They are district forests that have been parceled out, turned into buildings. So that contributes to the low declining forest cover in Uganda. Before 1962, we had over 50% forest cover. Before 1990, it had reduced to 24%. Around 2015, we were around 8%. Now we are going back to 12, we are now at 12.7, 12.9%, with an aim of getting to 15% by 2030. For us, we achieve our target of 15%. That is the national target. But if, so far, on the national target, the central forest reserves that belong to National Forestry Authority are directly under government, central government, contribute to 12%. The question is, what do the district forest reserves, the local forest reserves, the community forest reserves, if you have your land, for example, 12 acres, and you have half an acre of a forested area, that's a community forest. Usually near wells, those are community forests. But they are being cut away for charcoal. Charcoal is a necessary evil. We cannot do away with it. But we can sustainably use these forest resources by cutting and planting more.
In a phased manner. So where is the challenge, especially communicating the benefits of having these forests to our locals? like we said earlier, we started out at 28, 8, 9, and the goal is 15, but we are still having a challenge because people want to develop. And charcoal is the easiest way for them to cut down their trees. But is there a challenge with communicating this value? Why aren't we promoting it as much as we are with oil, coffee?
There are many challenges. As you see, as we talk now, different people will interpret our discussion today differently. Now, in different cultures, there is a belief that trees grew on their own. In Lusoga, they say jamera jene. Now, if something grew by itself, you will think that it will always grow by itself. Therefore, cut uncontrollably. And this is happening everywhere. Do you know why most of the forested area is in Karamoja? It's because their culture is not particular to forests, it's cattle. Yeah? So they look at trees as maybe for shades, and they kindly preserve. Although their trees are not gigantic or big in other areas, they are not tropical and such, but at least they try to preserve them. It is one of these days that charcoal is also going to Karamoja. So the perceptions, the cultural perceptions, beliefs and values towards forests and trees have done a great deed in reducing their tree cover and forest cover in Uganda. And this has to be changed. Several communications and behavior change interventions have been done, but communication sometimes has to be done repetitively so that we get to a level of advocacy where people are voluntarily advocating even when they are not in government or when they are not foresters. In some areas we have achieved that, say in Western Uganda. You'll find a forest like Kalinzu protected by the community, Kasuya Kitomi, Echuya, which is not the case for Mabira. Mabira has a lot of pressure. There are many industries around it, from Iganga, Jinja, Mukono, Wakiso, Kampala. Most of the illegal tree cutting, we've arrested over 200 people in the last 3 months, including the ringleaders. And they tell us, the people who are paying us are these factory owners, Chinese industries. They go into a racket, work with one of the security people, and then the law enforcers. We arrested a prison truck ferrying forest products from there. So the challenge should be overcome by all of us, changing our behaviors, changing our perceptions, embracing what the good forests can do for us. That is what I said we don't count, how much carbon does. We hadn't yet calculated that and converted into money. But if we convert it, you never know, forests could contribute maybe 30 trillion.
Maybe that's what we should do.
Now that the guidelines government is putting in place, I think soon we'll come out with a solid law, on carbon sequestration, carbon credits. Then people will realize. But before that, we are doing what we can to disseminate the success stories. I could take you one day to one of the most successful farmers, private tree farmers, and they would tell the story. And then we would go and visit one of the successful natural tropical high forests and how it is serving the people there. They have stories about how their crop yields are going up, how the ecotourism sector is thriving in that area, and you really see that the contribution of forests is enormous to Uganda.
Climate has completely changed because there are some deniers who say, no, climate change is not happening. It really is. It's hotter sometimes, it's colder sometimes. The floods are really going out of control. And if we have trees that are helping us absorb all the carbon dioxide in the air, then that would help us be better. I know there's a metric that determines or measures the kind of carbon dioxide in the air in Kampala, and it keeps getting worse every other year. I think it would be nice if we all be involved. We keep encouraging the patriots that the change doesn't have to come from government alone. It starts with us, like you mentioned. If we can plant trees on our birthdays, cut down one, we can plant 5 more. But since you're in government, if you had a magic wand, you have the authority, you have the power. What changes would you make now that you're not already making, apart from culture? Or would it also linger around the challenges you mentioned earlier with the land use and the culture and the planning?
Government is cracking down on encroachers in forests. The latest last week was the planting of pillars in Bugoma Central Forest Reserve.
Yeah.
Bugoma Central Forest Reserve has suffered enormously from encroachers in the name of investment. And some were preaching that sugarcane can do the same functions like tropical high forests. This has been proven. Sugarcane is a ratoon crop that drains the soils. It gets a lot of water from the soils. But these are natural trees that help in the formation of rains that fall and drains into our water channels. It does sequestration and our air is purified. So government is cracking down. The Minister of Lands came out last week, who were there in Kube, and this is just one example. But in Mabira, we have won court cases, people who had parceled out land in Mabira, and they were evicted, and the forest was restored. So that is one, enforcing the law.
It's very encouraging when you have actual leaders who are the ones encroaching these areas, the swamps. There's, for example, one minister who is building in a swampy area, and you think, okay, you are government. We hope that you are the example. And then people are discouraged.
You see, this is a somnambulance. And I'm not saying they are not there. They are the same people we are fighting.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, I know it is true that some big people in government are really encroaching on these forests and wetlands. And they snake their way into acquiring NEMA licenses.
Right.
And actually, in this case of Bugoma, we wonder how the NEMA came out to issue a license, a clearance for the cutting of a forest for sugarcane planting. And when you try to follow closely, you will see that there are top government officials in this who are shareholders in certain private businesses. But the president has come out clearly, particularly in the Bugoma issue, came and said if this investor has a land title that dates back before 1932, before Bugoma was gazetted, then let them present it. Otherwise, they have no land title. That's the president of Uganda. I could share later the written document. The cabinet came out and insisted Bugoma's 41,144 hectares have to be mapped out and pillars planted. It has been delayed since 2021 up to now, but as we talk now, tomorrow, the pillars are going to be planted. There are efforts to stop it, but we've got intelligence information and the other arms of intelligence are working. Are those who want to counter it. Because it's a cabinet directive, the president intervened, and this is the way to go to restore forest cover and tree cover in Uganda. The other, of course, that is continuous, is working with like-minded partners, marketing the resource that we have, the potential that we have, so that we get funding to increase forest cover. And by doing this, we'll increase employment, we'll get a better environment, we'll get better forest products for export. And this is what government is looking at. Increase people's incomes through employment. Forestry is one forest of about 60 hectares employs over 300 people. Forest patrolmen, ecotourism teams or companies. In that forest, there can be about 3 ecotourism concessionaires. So ecotourism people come for birding, trails, see different tree species, guides. Then the community benefits by getting the herbal medicines in there. So partnering with like-minded people to fund and then invite people who can invest in ecotourism and forestry business will create jobs and increase the incomes of people. The contribution to GDP will then also increase automatically. By 2030, it's a 5-year plan.
Aldon, I think you have brilliant ideas and I think you're very firm. I mean, some people shy away and say, no, they're not doing it. But I like how firm you are in admitting the challenges. We have a golden question that we ask every guest that comes onto this podcast, and it's about achieving a middle-class economy. From where you sit, what do you think it's really going to take us to achieve that middle-class economy?
The middle-class economy can be achieved by enabling what government sees as the most important ways of developing this country. We are looking at industrialization. With industrialization, you create employment. You get finished goods, finished forest products. You create more for export. And as you export more, you get incomes for the country or revenue for the country. Digitization. Right now, the National Forestry Authority, we are digitizing forest activities. Ecotourism, yes, you can book online, whether you want to go to Mabira, to Karenga, you want to go to Echuya to see the Batwa and their trails and how they are collaborating to manage the forest. You can book online.
How about mapping out the different tree species? And where
Yes,
they are?
we have delved into that. When you come to our office in Bugolobi, each tree species, that is Nakawa Central Forest Reserve, each tree species is branded.
Yes.
The botanical name and the common English name. So that is what we have done, and we look forward to doing it in 1.2 million hectares is too big, but we can at least do it in a phased manner until people know that this is this tree. At another extent, we've gone to put down some of the values of the tree. Some of the values, curative values, medical, yes, we have gone out to do that. This was done, we talk about forest industrialization. All our private tree planters are advised to start up factories. And you see, those who have plantational forests are making plywood. This is government revenue, employment, and planting more trees. So I think forestry as an enabler to development, in addition to all the other top 4 or 5 issues that the Permanent Secretary to Treasury talks about and the President, forestry is an enabler by providing a conducive environment and also allowing for people to get meaningful employment and contributing revenue to the government so that we achieve industrialization, digitization, and whatever the President talks about.
Although I feel like there's a paradox there, it will suffer a lot because of the industrialization. Like,
yes.
it will make more money. For example, you were talking about the Chinese who are encouraging the cutting down of trees because they're probably offering more money than the trees are.
Within the policies of Uganda, when starting up a factory or forest, you have to do an environmental governance plan. How you will sustainably use and account for your emissions. And that's where most factories, actually even banks, have come to us to request for land to plant trees. And I believe banks, industries, cultural institutions, this morning there were many cultural institutions calling who want. That is a strategy to increase forest cover, drive us into the middle income economy as an enabler. A good environment enables development. A conducive environment enables development. So forestry, if we increase the number of trees, the number of forests, we will be enabling the industrialization and all the others that government wants to achieve.
On a lighter note, I have a lot of people who say they prefer Nairobi to Kampala because Kampala doesn't have some forests or nature walks that Nairobi offers. And you know, some parks that have beautiful trees or beautiful forests that we can enjoy or go and relax to. Do you know any? In
Kampala, I'm a golfer. And the most conducive place I find is Uganda Golf Club. But most of the forests, district forests, have been dealt away with. But there is Nakawa Central Forest Reserve. You could come to our offices, there are trees, there are monkeys and birds. Nakawa Central. It's 9 hectares and it is still alive and well. We have the Entebbe Botanical, although it is now under Uganda Wildlife Authority, but it's also next to a golf course. So there are few indeed. And we urge the districts, the city, to plant trees in these gazetted areas, the local forest reserves. Kampala has about 11, but there are no more. The 11 you talk of, you will find buildings. So we urge that in support of the Central Forest Reserves, let the local forest reserves be also reinstated. Let's see what happened in Kenya, where buildings were demolished and the wetlands were restored, the forests were restored in Nairobi itself. We can see it in Uganda. It can happen. And now government has begun cracking down on these big investors who are using top officials in government to cut down our natural resources.
So we will have our last rapid fire. Just 2 questions. You list 3 things that are not middle class and 3 things that will definitely take us to middle class. So something we are doing in Uganda that you think, this one should stop, it won't go to the middle class. 3 others that will nurture a thriving middle class economy.
If we don't stop corruption, we won't get to the middle class. If we are giving out opportunities of investment and positions of influence without merit, we won't go to the middle class. If our education system is not scrutinized, we will get people who cannot deliver practical examples that can drive us to the middle class. With sustainable industrialization, we'll increase employment, increase exports for Uganda, increase incomes and household incomes, and that will drive us to the middle class. Good health, a conducive environment, people will be healthy and hardworking and will produce more to drive us to a middle class. I think those are some of the ideas.
I like that you have detached yourself from what is happening. So thank you so much for your time. Do you think there's something else we have not discussed that you would have wanted?
What I call upon Ugandans and all the other partners and stakeholders is let's work together. Every sector matters. Every sector matters. And we can take Uganda from one level to another if we follow the right steps.
And in this case, all existence is contribution, especially the trees. So we thank you so much for making time this afternoon. The fact that you even invited us to your office to come and see what's happening there in your 9 acres, we are very privileged. So thank you so much. We hope that you continue to serve this nation.
Thank you very much, Aggie.